Are you mocking us? What is this amount? One day I kept getting calls from my parents. When I finally answered the phone, my father's voice thundered through the speaker with unexpected fury. I couldn't make sense of what he was saying through his anger, and confusion washed over me like cold water. What are you talking about? I asked, my heart pounding against my ribs. The truth hit me like a slap. They were upset about the money I'd been sending them. Apparently, my sister Samantha had been sending $4,000 every month, while they thought my contribution was a mere 50 cents. That's absolutely not right. I've been sending $4,000 every month faithfully for years, I insisted, gripping the phone tighter. 20 years of monthly payments, 20 years of sacrifice, and this was their response? What? Don't lie to us, Maria. My father's voice cracked with disappointment. Samantha earns more than you with her modeling career and has been sending us $4,000 each month. I'm really disappointed in you. Samantha has always been so smart with her career choices. My mother joined in, her voice carrying that familiar note of comparison that had colored my entire childhood. Are you just enjoying living alone and spending money as you please? You're 48 years old, Maria. Shouldn't you have learned some responsibility by now? Why don't you learn a bit from your sister? She sends us so much of her hard-earned money. You clearly don't care about us at all. Her words ended with that well-practiced sigh that always made me feel 2 inches tall. As usual, my parents gave Samantha all the credit and all the slack. I couldn't process what they were saying. A deep, familiar sadness settled in my chest, that hollow ache that had been my companion since childhood. I couldn't find words to respond. Why would they think I was only sending 50 cents? The absurdity of it would have been laughable if it didn't hurt so much. Despite my frustration and the burning sense of injustice, I decided to follow my parents' lead. Fine, I thought to myself. If they don't appreciate what I've been doing all these years, I'll stop sending money for a while. The decision felt both terrifying and liberating, like jumping from a high dive after decades of standing at the edge. Maria's background: I am Maria, 48 years old, working as a middle manager at a food processing company. There's a 5-year age gap between my sister and me. Samantha has had the face of a model since birth. Everyone who passed by would be captivated by her appearance, often turning to look at her multiple times. Adults invariably praised her, saying, "I have never seen such a gorgeous child." In contrast, I had a more ordinary appearance, so adults often laughed when comparing us, saying, "Maria's face is so plain." My parents believed that Samantha would definitely succeed as a model or actress and adored her beyond reason. On the other hand, their attitude toward me was markedly different, and this disparity had been painfully evident since we were young. When I was in elementary school in the late 1970s, I wore hand-me-downs from neighbors, while Samantha's clothes were always new and reflected the latest trends. Furthermore, I had never taken any lessons, but Samantha started them as soon as she expressed interest in anything: ballet, piano, art classes, whatever caught her fancy. Spoiled by such treatment, Samantha became increasingly entitled as we grew up. "I don't have to lend my things to you, Maria, but it's perfectly fine for me to use your things," she would declare as she took away my cherished possessions one by one. Even when I complained, my parents always defended her, saying, "Samantha is still a child, forgive her." Even when Samantha was clearly in the wrong, they would say, "Let it go, Maria, you're the older sister," dismissing my feelings and refusing to really hear me. I grew weary of Samantha's manipulative ways, yet our parents never corrected her behavior. Sometimes the weight of my parents' obvious favoritism toward my sister would press down on me until I could barely breathe, but I resigned myself to accept it as the way things were. When I was in the upper grades of elementary school, Samantha announced she wanted her own room. Everyone knew that Samantha wouldn't give up until she got her way, so my parents told me, "Maria, move to the living room where your grandparents' portraits are. You don't have many clothes anyway, and it's enough if you have a place to sleep. Reluctantly, I took my bedding to the living room and made my new bedroom there. On the shelf in the living room were pictures of my grandparents, both of whom had passed away when I was young. My grandparents died shortly after Samantha was born. Unlike my parents, my grandparents had cherished me deeply. When I was little, it was my grandfather William who had chosen my name. I was named Maria because I was born during spring when my grandfather's favorite flowers were blooming in the garden. When I was small, I often sat on my grandfather's lap, enveloped in his warmth and unconditional love. I remember grandfather saying, "Maria, no matter how hard things are, you can always overcome them. After that, happiness will come again, just like the flowers returning each spring." Such memories suddenly flooded back as I sat in what was now my bedroom. Even afterward, my parents' treatment of me differed significantly from how they treated Samantha, and I never felt truly at home. As I grew older, I developed a dream of becoming a nurse. I gathered my courage and talked to my parents about wanting to take university entrance exams to fulfill my dream. "There's no way we have the money to send you to university. Get a job after you graduate from high school," they said dismissively. "Maria, you're the older sister, think about Samantha too. We need to save money for Samantha's future." My parents brushed aside my aspirations without any consideration, making university seem like an impossible luxury. However, our family wasn't particularly poor financially. I believe we were solidly middle class. Considering Samantha's future, my parents made do with the bare minimum for me. After high school, while Samantha went on to a prestigious university, I started working at a mid-sized company 3 stations away from home. At that time, I made the difficult decision to move out of my parents' house. I had hoped to stay home and save money until I got married, but I knew that if I stayed, I would continue to feel like an unwelcome guest in my own family. Therefore, I found a reasonably priced studio apartment close to my company. Living alone was liberating, my own space, my own rules, my own peace, since my parents' house had never been a place of comfort for me. Meanwhile, Samantha, carrying all my parents' hopes and dreams, continued to live at home after graduating from university and worked sporadically as a model. She was scouted by a talent agency while shopping with friends during her college years. My parents were ecstatic that Samantha had joined a talent agency, and bragging about her became part of their daily routine, even to complete strangers. The financial arrangement: one day in my early 30s, Samantha called me, talking about expressing gratitude to our parents. "All that we sisters have achieved is thanks to Dad and Mom. From now on, let's repay them for raising us," Samantha said cheerfully and energetically. It seemed that Samantha, who used to only care about herself, had really matured. "I've been thinking about what we can do for Mom and Dad. After all, money might be the most helpful. How about giving them about $4,000 a month?" $4,000? Isn't that an awful lot? I was taken aback by the amount suggested. Modeling must really pay well, I thought, though something in her too bright voice made me hesitate. "I think Mom and Dad would be surprised if they got that much money from us. I want to surprise them soon, so let's start this month." Although I was somewhat skeptical, I had heard that our parents were struggling financially because they had spent so much on us. They claimed they were burdened with debt, so I decided to accept Samantha's suggestion, despite my reservations. However, I was barely making ends meet myself. To send $4,000, I would have to significantly dip into my savings. My monthly salary was about $3,000. Even if I lived on $1,000, I would still be $2,000 short each month. Therefore, I took a weekend security guard job at a construction site. The pay was decent, but the work was physically demanding in ways my desk job wasn't. In summer, I endured the scorching heat, and in winter, the biting cold. I thought about quitting many times when my body ached and my eyes struggled to stay open during my regular job. However, the people I worked with unexpectedly treated me with kindness, often buying me drinks and snacks because they thought I was doing well. To save on expenses, I limited eating out as much as possible and cut unnecessary spending to the bone, but $4,000 was still a stretch every month. How could I earn more money? I need a certification to advance my career, I decided after much thought. I devoted myself to studying for a healthcare management certification during the precious few hours I had between jobs, sparing no time for sleep or relaxation. Days of being chased by work and studies blurred together in an exhausting race. Around that time, I received a call from my parents. Busy as I was with my multiple jobs and studies, I couldn't answer right away, and they left several missed calls. Sorry, I couldn't pick up sooner. Did something happen? I finally managed to return their call, my voice betraying my exhaustion. The first words that hit me were, "You are horrible. What do you think of us?" I could hear my father's angry voice on the other end of the phone. Behind him, I could also hear my mother agreeing vehemently, saying, "Really, Maria, really?" I had no idea why they were so angry. "Are you mocking us? What is this amount?" my father demanded. "What do you mean? Are you talking about the money I send?" I was confused and couldn't understand what had triggered their anger. "Do you know how much Samantha is sending?" $4,000. "And you send just 50 cents? Are you mocking us?" My father's shout made me hold the phone away from my ear. "That's impossible. I've been sending $4,000 every month faithfully," I repeated firmly, stunned by my father's accusation. "What? Don't lie. Samantha earns more than you from her successful modeling career, so she's the one sending us $4,000 every month. I'm really disappointed in you." "Samantha is so smart and successful," my father expressed his displeasure, his voice dripping with comparison. My mother also joined in the criticism. "Are you just enjoying living alone and spending money as you please? Why don't you learn a bit from your sister? She sends us so much money she's earned." "You don't care about us at all," she said with that familiar sigh. What was happening? I couldn't understand what my parents were saying and felt utterly confused, a wave of sadness washing over me. Words failed me. Previously, Samantha had suggested, "Since it's from both of us, let's keep it a secret and use the name Rainbow when we send the money." At that time, I didn't know that Samantha's stage name was Rain, and it turned out that the name used for sending the 50 cents was under my name, Maria. My parents believed that Samantha was the one depositing $4,000, and before I could explain, they yelled, "We don't need such a mocking amount of 50 cents from you," and hung up the phone. A bitter feeling toward Samantha for setting me up consumed me. That night, I couldn't sleep at all, my mind a storm of complex emotions. 20 years of working multiple jobs, of sacrificing my own comfort and time, of putting their needs before mine, and this was how they saw me. I lay awake wondering whether I should continue sending money in this situation. Jennifer's advice, the next day, I decided to talk to my high school friend, Jennifer, who works at a financial consulting firm. Jennifer had always been very capable at her job and has been a reliable and justice-minded woman since our high school days. At 47, she had risen to a senior position through hard work and sharp instincts. I've always found her trustworthy because she gives frank opinions when consulted. Fortunately, her workplace was nearby, and we were able to meet for lunch during our break. "I was surprised when you said you needed to talk so urgently. What happened, Maria? You look exhausted," she said, studying my face with concern over her stylish reading glasses. "I need to talk about something concerning my family," I began, my voice smaller than I intended. I told her about the recent events, the years of sending money, Samantha's suggestion, the angry phone call. Jennifer listened attentively, occasionally nodding, her expression growing more troubled as I went on. After hearing my story, Jennifer asked pointedly, "Are your parents really struggling financially? They're in their early 70s, right? Robert must have a pension from his pharmaceutical job." She was also visibly shocked by the amount of $4,000. They say they have debts from raising us. Samantha suggested that we send money to our parents to show our gratitude, I explained, though the words sounded hollow even to my own ears. Jennifer looked at me directly, her eyes sharp with concern. You say it's money spent on both of you, but you didn't even go to university until you paid for night school yourself, right? Isn't it mostly money spent on Samantha? And isn't your dad receiving his pension? There's no need to send $4,000 monthly. It's hard to believe they suddenly need that much when they've been living comfortably all this time. If they say your contribution is just 50 cents, why not stop the payments like they suggested? I found myself nodding in agreement with Jennifer's practical advice. You're too kind, Maria. You've always put everyone else first. You shouldn't let yourself be pushed around anymore, especially at our age. Jennifer's words resonated with something deep inside me. What am I to my family after all these years? I shouldn't just do as they say without question, I reminded myself. Not anymore, not at 48. The revelation, 2 months later, my phone wouldn't stop ringing from early morning. Thinking it might be an emergency, I answered, only to hear Samantha's angry voice. Why haven't you been answering the phone all morning? And why did you stop sending money on your own? What were you thinking? Samantha shouted, her anger apparent even through the phone. I'm already overwhelmed with my own life, Samantha, I said, surprising myself with my calm tone. I was told our parents were struggling because suddenly there was no $4,000 coming in, but I've learned that the money was turning into your pride and our parents' wasteful spending. Actually, Jennifer and a friend of Samantha's were acquaintances, and I had heard this from Jennifer. Jennifer has an extensive professional network and had been discreetly asking around on my behalf. I had always suspected something wasn't right about this arrangement. Jennifer also discovered that Samantha spends quite lavishly on designer clothes, expensive cosmetics, and regular spa treatments. Hearing this from Jennifer, anger welled up inside me, not the fleeting kind, but a deep, smoldering rage that had been building for decades. Even though I was cutting back on necessities and working myself to exhaustion, Samantha had been telling her friends, my big sister is my source of funds, so I rely on her money. Lately, I've been struggling because I don't have money from my sister. I might have to cut back on facials and cosmetics for a while. Then I discovered that my mother was buying luxury brand purses, and my father was not going to work but gambling instead with my hard-earned money. It felt absurd and infuriating to support my parents' and sister's extravagant lifestyles with money I had sacrificed so much to earn. Do you think I don't know Dad receives a pension? So my money isn't needed for necessities, is it? I declared, my voice stronger than it had ever been when speaking to my family. The confrontation, a week passed in tense silence. By then, I had learned the whole truth from various sources. Next, my parents showed up at my apartment unannounced. The $4,000 payments had stopped, and it seems Samantha had finally told them the truth when they pressed her. I can't afford such money, she had apparently revealed through tears. Samantha had been telling our parents that she was earning a high income as a model, but in reality, she wasn't making any significant money at all and was becoming a burden to her agency. Samantha only worked as a model occasionally. Though still attractive at 43, she had no particular talent in singing or dancing and nothing outstanding to offer, which made it difficult for her to succeed in the competitive entertainment industry. Her jobs were low-paying, such as modeling for inexpensive online shopping catalogs. All this came to light when our parents finally confronted her. We've been strict with Samantha about her deception, my father said, standing awkwardly in my modest but neat living room. You don't need to worry and can continue sending money as before. Of course, there was no apology for accusing me of lying or for the years of favoring Samantha. We've been preparing for these past 2 months, so please deposit the money when you can. You're reliable after all, my parents brazenly demanded the 2 months of payments I had stopped, as if it was their due. Their sense of entitlement knew no boundaries. I heard from Samantha that you had some debt. Is that true? I asked directly, something I had been wondering about for years but never had the courage to question. Debt? There's no way. We covered Samantha's tuition with your grandparents' inheritance, my father stated matter-of-factly. I felt the blood drain from my face. Samantha's claims about our parents having debt and needing money were entirely false, just as I had begun to suspect. We just need a bit more for shopping since your father's pension isn't enough for the lifestyle we're accustomed to, my mother said nonchalantly, adjusting her new designer watch. It was crystal clear that my parents had enough money for a comfortable lifestyle, they just wanted more luxury than they could afford on their own. Father's pension should be more than adequate for your needs. Besides, why doesn't Samantha get a full-time job somewhere instead of clinging to a modeling career that isn't working out? When I firmly said this, challenging them for the first time in my life, my father's face darkened with anger. Is that how you talk to your own parents? I didn't raise a daughter to act like this. He snapped, as if I were still a child to be scolded. My mother followed with equal indignation, we don't need a daughter like you. They looked at me with disappointment, as if I had failed some fundamental test of daughterhood. If you're going to be like that, we'll just use the savings your grandfather left for you. You're no longer part of this family. Shockingly, my parents threatened to use the money my grandfather had specifically left for me, money I hadn't even known existed until that moment. Do as you like, but from now on, don't contact me again. I made my decision, realizing I didn't want to be treated as a convenient ATM by my parents and Samantha anymore. When they finally left, storming out with threats and accusations, tears spilled from my eyes. What had I ever been to my family except a resource to be used? The turning point, 2 months passed in blessed silence. Then suddenly, the doorbell rang one Sunday afternoon. There at my door stood my parents and Samantha, looking significantly less polished than the last time I'd seen them. I thought I would never see them again, but I reluctantly opened the door. I was puzzled by the worn appearance of my parents and Samantha, and they too seemed surprised by my appearance. What's with that new look? With puzzled faces, my parents and Samantha asked since I had become more confident in my appearance and was wearing better quality clothing than before. I finally completed my healthcare management certification that I've been studying for. Thanks to the certification and Jennifer's recommendation, my salary improved substantially with my promotion at work. I'm now leading the corporate wellness team as a department head. The company headquarters is a bit far from here, so I'm planning to move to a nicer apartment closer to work, I explained calmly, noticing their eyes widening as I spoke. Before you indulge in such luxuries, give us some money. They demanded without preamble. Are you planning to abandon your struggling family? Just lend us some money, they pleaded, their tone shifting from demanding to desperate in an instant. The three of them spoke over each other, saying whatever they thought might convince me to open my wallet. Disgusted with my parents and Samantha, who started demanding money as soon as they realized my income had increased, I said firmly, with Dad's pension and Samantha's income, you could live comfortably if you managed your money responsibly. In reality, Samantha hardly had any work anymore. The modeling world is brutal for women over 40. What would you know, big sister? Samantha appealed with a voice on the verge of tears. The radiant appearance she once had was faded, replaced by too much makeup trying to hide the effects of stress and poor choices. Samantha, who was struggling in her career, had been scouted by another talent agency that claimed she was perfectly suited to be a mature actress. She decided to borrow money from our parents and invest in joining this new agency. However, a large sum was required to join, and our father even used his early retirement severance pay to help her, but it turned out to be a complete scam. After paying the money, suddenly no one from the agency could be contacted. Shockingly, no formal contract had even been signed. I was dumbfounded by such reckless financial behavior from people in their 40s and 70s. Before you come to me for a bailout, you should report this fraud to the police, I advised, knowing it was probably too late to recover their money. Right after saying this, someone knocked at my door. It was a representative from a consumer finance company. Are you family? It seemed they had followed my parents to my address. I discovered that my parents and sister had borrowed a large amount of money, betting everything on Samantha's non-existent acting career. Moreover, Samantha had been working occasionally at a nightclub to relieve stress and make ends meet. As a result, they were completely out of money and deeply in debt. Despite having no real income, my parents had chased dreams of luxury and gambling, ultimately losing everything. I was thoroughly dismayed by their continued poor judgment. When the consumer finance representative asked if I was related to them, I made my final decision. I don't know these people at all. I have nothing to do with them, and I closed the door on that chapter of my life. Later, I heard that my parents filed for bankruptcy, and their debt was temporarily cleared. They sold their house and now live in a modest apartment. Both of my parents got jobs through a temporary agency and seem to be managing their lives more responsibly out of necessity. Ironically, the construction site where I used to work part-time was apparently my father's new assigned workplace through the temp agency. I'll be in your care starting today, my former supervisor had told my father on his first day. Ah, it's the old man. Help me out. There used to be a young lady here before, but she quit. She worked hard and earned money to send to her parents. I'd like to see the face of parents who make their middle-aged daughter work on a construction site. My father's face had reportedly stiffened with shame when he realized the connection. Samantha gave up on modeling completely and continued working in nightlife, but her self-centered personality led to her being unwelcome by customers. She was fired from nightclubs and lounges one after another, eventually managing to earn her living expenses at a small bar. Her appearance changed dramatically due to increased drinking and stress. Among the regulars at the bar, her stories about once being a model seemed like mere fantasy. A model? Who are you kidding? Look in the mirror, she was mocked for how much her body and face had changed. New beginnings, I have cut ties with my parents and sister, and for the first time in my life, I am truly enjoying my days. 5 years have passed since then, and today I was attending Jennifer's wedding. At 52, I felt more comfortable in my own skin than I ever had in my youth. The wedding was held in a beautiful chapel in Miami overlooking the sea. Before me, the blue sea and sky stretched endlessly. The atmosphere was filled with a sense of expansive possibility. Next to Jennifer, her new husband stood smiling, a solid, kind-looking man in his early 50s. A new life was growing between them. Jennifer had always seemed to be focusing exclusively on her career, but she had been quietly dating a colleague from another department for the past few years. I achieve everything I want on my own terms. I discard what doesn't serve me without regret. Maria, you should also continue to face your true feelings and needs, Jennifer said with a smile that radiated genuine happiness. Her husband standing beside her laughed affectionately. Don't throw me away, okay? I'm really grateful to you, Jennifer. Be happy, I responded with the biggest, most genuine smile I could remember giving. Jennifer's wedding was a special day for this woman who had helped me find my freedom, so I celebrated with heartfelt gratitude for our friendship. As the wedding reception was drawing to a close, a man appeared, slightly out of breath from rushing to arrive. Apparently, he was a friend of the bride and groom who had been delayed by work. Jennifer introduced him as David, a 53-year-old architect who owned his own firm. He was tall, well-built, with salt and pepper hair and laugh lines that suggested a life well lived. When he smiled, it reached his eyes in a way that made me want to know what had put that warmth there. I wanted to introduce David to you, Maria. Your personalities are remarkably similar, both of you have that rare combination of kindness and strength, Jennifer said, clearly playing matchmaker with no subtlety whatsoever. Finding Jennifer's transparent attempt amusing, both David and I couldn't help but laugh together. Afterward, David and I found ourselves deep in conversation, discovering shared interests and similar life philosophies. We decided to continue our talk over dinner the following weekend. As we made plans, I felt a gentle warmth spreading through me, like spring flowers finally blooming after a long winter. From now on, I plan to enjoy both my work and the possibility of new love, living life fully on my own terms. Grandpa William, please keep watching over me from wherever you are. I'm finally blooming, just as you always said I would.